Just joining us, this is the France 24 debate. We're examining the fallout from Super Tuesday in the United States. 20% of the states were picking their primary candidate for president. And, although the scales tipped in favor of former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney, the slugfest does continue and will do so for weeks and possibly months. With us to talk about it, Stuart Haugen of Republicans Abroad. Also with us is Zachary Miller of Democrats Abroad. From Washington, Republican Party strategist Dan Hazelwood and Josh Kraushaar of the National Journal. Welcome back to all of you. We mentioned the rules changes, and one of the big rules changes has been spending. And a lot of people say that it's because of outside spending, that unlimited outside spending, that we've had such a nasty campaign. Just to give you a flavor, in Michigan, Mitt Romney closed the gap on Rick Santorum by pounding home the message in ads like the one you're about to see.
Your values, how would you have voted? Would you have voted to let convicted violent felons regain the right to vote? Rick Santorum voted yes, joining Hillary Clinton. Increase the debt limit 5 times, adding $3 trillion in debt? Santorum voted yes. Billions in wasteful pork, including the bridge to nowhere. Santorum voted yes and says he's proud of these votes. More than 20 years in Washington changed Santorum's values. Restore Our Futures responsible for the content of this message.
Now, you heard that. It said, Restore Our Future is the responsible for the content of this message. Nowhere does it say that Restore the Future is a super PAC, a political action committee associated to Mitt Romney. And by the way, that ad also concludes, you saw there, with a suggestion that you go to a dedicated website called rickfacts.com. And there's not only a website dedicated to Rick Santorum where you can see all kinds of misdeeds on his part. There's also one devoted to Newt Gingrich. It's called newtfacts.com. So there you see that. And again, this coming from a so-called super PAC. Josh Kraushaar in Washington. How has the new rules that were allowed by that Supreme Court ruling in 2010 changed the tone of the campaign?
It's remarkable how nearly every single ad run by all the super PACs have been negative and attack ads as scathing, if not more scathing, than the one you just aired. But there is a flip side to the super PAC argument, and even though Mitt Romney has and his super PAC have been spending a much greater degree of money than Rick Santorum and Newt Gingrich, the super PAC and the small number of donors that can contribute large amounts have really helped the Santorum and Gingrich campaigns, because without their assistance, without the $1 million and multi-million-dollar donations coming from a handful of donors, they wouldn't be able to have enough money to run viable campaigns. Gingrich and Santorum have been very poor fundraisers, and these outside super PACs have allowed them to financially stay in the game. So even though Mitt Romney is spending far more money, both with his campaign and with his super PAC, Santorum and Gingrich have arguably benefited a little more because they've been able to get their message out. They haven't run out of money. They can keep this campaign going on and on and on, whereas in the past, they may have run out of money from their campaign accounts, and they would have just had to drop out of the race.
Zachary Miller, so are these super PACs a blessing in disguise?
I don't think so. I think there's too much money in politics. I'd like to see them gone. I'd like to see just money get out of politics completely. It's just too much right now. It's just crazy, and you have no limits to some spending. It's muddying the waters. It's corrupting the whole idea of politics right now. I'd like to see it all out completely.
John McCain, who ran last time around, had championed a bill to put caps on spending.
Yeah, it didn't work, obviously, and then the Citizens United decision. I would echo what Zach says, assuming that he agrees that union money ought to be banned as well.
I agree, all of it. I think this is one thing,
which, by the way, goes 98 or 99% to Democrats. That's the reason I object to it, of course.
No, I mean, when I say money, I say all money. Get it out.
We're on the same page.
We're on the same page on that.
It will take a constitutional amendment, I believe, to do it, though.
Dan Hazelwood,
exactly.
You hear we have bipartisan consensus here in Paris. Do you agree?
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, they're just incredibly wrong on the facts and the history. Is you can't take money out of politics without censoring speech. People have the right to speak, and if you say that you don't have the right to have your voice heard, it's the same thing as cutting them off. And the people need to realize, every country has their own system of how the rules are set up. If you go back to the founding fathers, James Madison wrote, the way that we're going to survive as democracy. He said we don't want to become like Greece, the Greece of the mob rule of the 3rd century BC, not Greece of today. But he said the way we're going to do that is faction must be made to combat faction. And that the way that the system works is everybody gets in the arena, everybody makes an argument for their own views, and they all struggle it out. And for every side A, there's an opposition to side A. And then the voters get to look and make their decisions. And that's what we have now. You just heard Josh talk about there's super PACs on all sides. President Obama has a super PAC, but 4 years ago he didn't need one. He raised it into his campaign. Money is how we try and make people listen. You want to take money out of politics? Toothpaste. We spend more money on toothpaste in the United States than we do on political campaigns. And I mean every political campaign, not just the presidency. So the idea that voting records, Mitt Romney's record in Massachusetts, Rick Santorum's record in the U.S. Senate, Newt Gingrich's record as Speaker, President Obama's record as President, that information can't be shared with the voters the way that candidates and parties want to? What's wrong with that?
I kind of have a feeling that democracy and presidents shouldn't be marketed like toothpaste. It's
not.
Well, you just made the comparison yourself. We're
On the
all
amount
here.
of money.
We're all having free speech. We're all on television. None of us are paying for this. I mean, why can't we have a system set up where people of various political concerns can come together without billions having to be raised to make those points?
All right, and
how much money are you going to, where's the money going to come from, and how are you going to spend it to make the voters pay attention? Because remember, the other part of free speech is people have the right not to listen. And that's one of the great things about democracy in the United States is people have the right to turn off and pay no attention at all to politics. So it takes a lot of money, and it's one of the things that people who aren't involved in the political system don't really realize. The amount of money it takes to get someone's attention is considerable. I know exactly how much because I'm one of the fundraisers for the Democratic Party. And I know that if we had not so much emphasis on raising money, we'd be able to be doing a lot more as far as talking about the issues.
I guess if everybody's shouting, somebody has to shout louder. If everybody's talking, it doesn't cost quite as much.
All right, let's listen to what the Republican frontrunner has to say. Mitt Romney, it says it's the just reward, all this money, of good old-fashioned hard work.
We organized a number of fundraising organizations or individuals, and we built the kind of organization you have to go up against President Obama, who will have $1 billion. He'll far outspend our Republican nominee, but we're in a very good position to raise the money we need to stand up to his message and his effort.
Is that a fair point, Josh Kraushaar?
It's somewhat fair, but getting back to the debate, you can talk about the idealism of trying to take money out of the system, which is unrealistic. But when you have more money coming in, ironically, it actually helps challengers take on the establishment. It helps challengers compete more fairly in the system. And like I was saying, Rick Santorum and Newt Gingrich wouldn't be able to compete fairly against Mitt Romney if they didn't have that money coming in from super PACs. And the Obama campaign, I mean, most presidents have this huge financial advantage because they're the president. They can go to these really ritzy fundraisers, get tens and thousands of dollars from donors who want to have access to the president. But the challengers usually don't have, they get started later, they have a primary, they start out at a significant financial disadvantage. So when you saw the White House change their rules, they said they didn't want to take money or they didn't want to embrace the super PACs, but now that they're belatedly flip-flopping on that, they've changed their position. It's a belated response to the reality that Romney's campaign could have that balance. They could have a much bigger competitive balance because the super PAC money is balancing out the money that the White House is able to raise, which is usually at a big advantage over their challengers. So, you can talk about the corruption of money in politics, and it's a fair debate to have. But if you're looking at competitive balance and having both sides having the same amount of money to get their message out, super PACs have actually been pretty good, or at least having more money in the system has been a benefit to democracy and to competitive balance.
Dan Hazelwood, there was an analysis on National Public Radio that said that the problem for Romney could be that his name will be linked in the fall campaign with super PACs and with negative advertisement. Is that a worry, you think?
I think that's something that you pay a little bit of attention to when you're in the Romney campaign. But the reality of a presidential campaign is the more you talk about the process, the less the voters pay attention. So the mechanics and the process and super PACs are a snore to the voters. They're going to turn it off. You saw a little bit of that in with Newt Gingrich's several victory speeches. Early on in the process, he was supposed to be one of the great orators in the party, but a lot of his speeches have had these very technical process arguments that have been very sort of confusing to people to follow. What's going to happen in the fall is this is going to come down to, first, the American people are going to say, how is the President of the United States doing? Is he doing a good enough job to be reelected, or am I going to consider somebody else? That's the first question. And then after that, it will become, is the Republican nominee an acceptable replacement for him? And the debate is going to revolve around the state of the economy, first and foremost, our budget deficit, and how are we going to get out of the problems that we are in this country.
But hang on a second. We just saw, Dan Hazelwood, hang on a second. The little clip that we showed from that political advertisement began with accusing Rick Santorum of wanting to give special favors to convicted felons. Now, you and I both know that that's a lie.
I think that was about, no, wait a second. That clip talked about, and Rick Santorum has admitted that he has a different view than a lot of people. That Rick Santorum's view is after if you've been under U.S. law, if you're convicted of a felony, in most states you lose your voting rights. It's a state-by-state decision. The question is, in each state, after you've served your probation, after you've served your prison time, do you have your voting rights reinstated? Now, some people say no, once you've committed a felony, you should be banned for life from voting. Rick Santorum's view is that once you have served your time and you've fulfilled your obligations back to society under whatever sentencing the justice system gave you, that then your full rights should be restored.
So you don't think these political ads are hammering home dumbed down messages?
I think what I just described actually is an important issue to some people. I don't think the presidency of the United States is going to turn in the general election on that issue. And I don't think that, a lot of opinion elites think that we're dumbing down stuff for voters. Voters are very, very smart in how they evaluate information, and if they think they're being talked down to, if they think they're being insulted, or if the politician is talking about something irrelevant to their concerns, that politician fades from the limelight. We've seen that process occur in the Republican nomination contest now.
All right.
And actually, that's the exact process that brought Barack Obama to victory in 2008. He talked about something that was resonating powerfully, particularly amongst Democrat primary voters, and Hillary Clinton was tacking and being a little bit more political in her answers, and they didn't like that. This is how the process works, and it's a good, healthy thing.
All right, and one man who agrees with you on the France 24 debate Facebook page, when we asked whether there should be curbs on what you can say in these political ads, is Eric. He says, FP, I'm taken aback for such a question to be posed. To do so would be opening a can of worms. And who would be doing the deciding of what is verboten? On Twitter, Aaron says, this is an apt debate topic. It also applies to Russia and now France, which is in an election race. The U.S. has been very vitriolic, he says. Now, it does bring us to the point of how this is all going to play out during the fall. Let's turn back the clock 24 hours. It's Super Tuesday. The Republicans' attack ads are going full throttle. And during a press conference at the White House, which, coincidence or not, happened to take place on that day, reporters bring up some of those attacks with Barack Obama.
He also said that you are America's most feckless president since Carter.
Yeah.
What would you like to say to Mr. Romney?
Good luck tonight.
Barack Obama in the driver's seat when he sees the Republicans duking it out?
Well, that's always the case, isn't it? Until we get behind one candidate and everybody rolls up. Well, there's debate in the Republican camp about who should be our candidate right now. There's no debate about who should be our president, and that should be the next Republican nominee.
When you see that the New York Times in its editorial says that the Republican Party has cemented itself on the distant right of American politics with a primary campaign that has been relentlessly nasty, divisive, and vapid, what is your...
Again, that's very, very short-sighted and very, very limited memory, because primaries have that effect. They pull people to their ideological base of the party to win the primary. And then we jump back to the center and fight it out there for the general election. And frankly, while Mitt Romney's having some tough times pulling it together right now, one of the things that he does show is the ability to appeal to the center and to the independent vote. And that may be a big, big asset against Barack Obama.
Well, you know,
and the irony...
do agree that with Barbara Bush, who said this has been the ugliest campaign that she can remember. And, you know, I hear a lot of the Republican candidates saying a lot of horrible things about the other Republican candidates, and I find myself agreeing with all of them.
Diane Hazelwood?
Well, you know, quoting the New York Times on something like this is, you know, they manufacture the cement for the far left opinion elite views in the United States. That is a left-wing paper that despises every Republican. They are already endorsing every Democrat candidate for every office for the next 10 years. To view them as something sort of as a dispassionate observer is laughable. The fact is that when you go out there, political campaigns in the United States are a robust contact sport debate. You go back 1964, Lyndon Johnson said, if you elect Barry Goldwater, we'll have nuclear war. You know, Jimmy Carter made the same point versus Ronald Reagan. We've had a lot of very serious debates, a lot of hard-hitting stuff. You know, what's going on right now and why it bothers people is the same thing that bothered people in 04 and 08 about these ads on both sides. There are great matters at stake here. There are strong and passionate views. People on the left and people like me on the right have very different views about the direction of where we want to go, and we are going to pound the table and loudly argue over who is right and where we're going to go. Okay. And that's an important part of the process.
All right.
But I quoted Barbara Bush.
We're gonna have to leave it there. I want to thank you, Zachary Miller, Stuart Haugen. I want to thank Josh Krashauer of the National Journal and Dan Hazelwood of Targeted Creative Communications for joining us from Washington. And thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate. Stay with us. Coming up next, if you want to find out who the richest man on earth is, well, Marcus Carlson will have the answer in business.
In the United States, owning your own home is part of the American dream. But for many, the dream has become a nightmare. The country is gripped by its worst financial crisis since the 1930s. Every month, tens of thousands of homeowners are losing their houses to foreclosure. But people are fighting back. Our reporters went to Florida, the state that has been most severely affected, where one group of people helps these victims of the crisis to hold on to the American dream. Don't miss Reporters, Thursday 9:45 p.m. Paris time on France 24.